December 26, 2025. Ukrainian forces repel Russian assault near Dobropillia, destroying 12 armored vehicles. That headline, and we saw a lot like it that week, really only tells you a tiny piece of the story. Because what happened in the Dobropillia sector in late 2025, it wasn't just another successful defense, it was a strategic catastrophe for the attackers. A failure so profound it might have just redefined the whole idea of massed mechanized warfare.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex Dath. Join me with Arya in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, that strategic failure we just mentioned, the collapse of mechanized warfare in the Dobropillia sector. We've pulled together a ton of reports, satellite imagery, frontline accounts, all to understand how Ukraine's integrated defense, this fortress belt, just turned two massive armored assaults into basically rubble.
Right. And our mission today is really technical. We want to unpack the source material, look at these two major Russian armored assaults, one in October and then the really catastrophic one on December 22nd. We need to get to the why. Why are these traditional armored pushes just hitting a brick wall against this kind of defense?
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, we have to start with the cliffhangers. The biggest failure, it involved a column of 24 armored vehicles. Tanks, IFVs, APCs, all of it. And they were neutralized in about 100 minutes.
100 minutes.
Less than 2 hours to wipe out a battalion-sized force. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
And what's also surprising is the quality, or maybe the lack of quality, of the forces they're using. Our reports confirm these were elements of Russia's 40th and 155th Naval Infantry Brigades. I mean, these are units that have been ground down over and over, patched up with poorly trained guys, and then thrown into the absolute worst fights. It shows a real desperation.
The desperation to just sacrifice people for almost no gain. And as we get into the tactical side, we can't ignore that human element, the sheer brutality of it all. We've got reports of what's being called the razor wire massacre and even the detonation of an ammonia pipeline.
Right, as a smokescreen, a toxic one.
Exactly. These aren't normal tactics. It points to a complete breakdown in command discipline. Okay, so let's start with the basics, the geography. Why Dobropillia? Why is this one spot in Donetsk so critical that Moscow just keeps slamming these high-value units against it?
Well, it's not about the town itself. It's about its function. Dobropillia is like a defensive hinge for the whole area. It's a buffer zone, protecting bigger centers like Pokrovsk and Myrnarad. But the main reason, as you hinted at, is all about logistics.
So if they take it, what's the impact? What do they cut off?
They cut the lifeblood of the Eastern Front. Simple as that. Dobropillia is right next to the E50 highway and a major rail line. That's the main artery for moving Ukrainian supplies, troops, everything. If you take it, you isolate Pokrovsk from the north and west. You start setting the stage for a major encirclement.
But they know it's defended. They know the geography is tough.
Yeah.
So why the frontal assault? Why not just go around?
Because they can't. The terrain itself is a defensive weapon for Ukraine. The whole area is lowlands. On a map, it looks flat and open, but in late fall and winter, it's all just thick, heavy mud. Heavy armor can't maneuver off-road. You add in the river valleys, like the Kazani-Terets River, and your big armored columns are forced onto roads, onto predictable crossing points.
So the land literally funnels them into the kill zones.
It absolutely does, and that's before you even get to the man-made defenses, the fortress belt.
Right. Tell us about that. What exactly turns a simple road into a death trap here?
It's a layered, very sophisticated system, not just trenches. You're talking about deep anti-tank ditches, multiple rows of them. Then 2 full rows of those concrete dragon's teeth to stop tracked vehicles. But the real genius is how they use simpler things, like massive amounts of razor wire.
Razor wire. That sounds like something out of World War I.
It does, but its purpose is completely modern. The wire isn't there to actually stop the enemy. It's there to channel them. It forces vehicles and infantry down very specific, very predictable paths. And those paths are, of course, pre-designated kill zones, already targeted by drones, artillery, everything. The whole system is designed to control their movement.
It's just incredible when you look at the source material.
Right.
That they tried the same kind of mass attack twice in 2 months after the first one failed so badly. Let's dive into those 2 case studies. They really show this refusal to adapt.
It is baffling. It's like they're trying to fight a 21st century drone war with a 1980s playbook. They just can't handle the transparency of the modern battlefield.
So let's start with the first one, October 27th. What was the goal?
The objective was to capture Shakov and Volodymyrivka. It was a big push-29 armored vehicles. And here they did try something a little different. They used staggered timings, different routes, and they specifically waited for bad weather.
Heavy cloud cover to hide from the drones.
That was the idea, but it didn't work. The 1st Azov Corps and the airborne forces beat back the entire assault. Took about 6 hours, and the sources are clear. The weather ended up being a bigger problem for the attackers' mobility than for the defenders' drones. The mud just bogged them down.
And the losses.
15 vehicles in total, 2 tanks, 12 armored combat vehicles, so your IFVs and APCs, and 1 light vehicle. Losing that many troop carriers tells you the infantry took a real beating.
Okay, so now let's fast forward to December 22nd. This is where the disaster really scales up.
It does. This was a desperate, all-in push toward Razin and Fedorivka. Instead of staggering the attack, they went for density. 4 separate armored columns, 24 armored vehicles in total, plus dozens of motorized units. We're talking quad bikes, motorcycles.
And again, with these depleted units, the 40th and 155th. One observer called them a really beaten-up sad sack unit.
Yeah, it's just filled with poorly trained replacements. And the result was total destruction. And it happened fast. 24 armored vehicles gone in about 100 minutes. The final numbers are just staggering.
Yeah.
6 tanks, 9 IFVs, 5 APCs, and an armored recovery vehicle. That's 21 armored hulls.
And what about those motorcycles?
That's the part that really sticks with you. In a final wave, they sent in 11 ATVs and motorcycles, maybe to rush infantry into gaps. 10 out of the 11 were destroyed. FPV drones, small arms, just picked off. Attrition on that level, in that time frame, it tells you something fundamental has changed. And that something is the technical superiority of Ukraine's defense, specifically the unmanned systems forces, the USF. It's not just about having drones anymore. It's about how you integrate them into this incredibly lethal kill chain.
Right, the CUA is counter-unmanned aerial system capabilities. So walk us through this new kill chain. How does it stop a heavy column in its tracks?
It starts with what you could call a drone mine synergy. It's a brilliant, deadly innovation. You have these heavy Baba Yaga drones, the ones from units like Lazar's group. They're not just dropping bombs anymore. Now they're deploying remote-laid anti-tank mines, dropping them right on the road, just seconds ahead of the lead vehicle.
So you get an immediate immobilization.
Yeah.
Right at the front of the column.
Exactly. And that's step 2, maneuver denial. The lead vehicle is stopped, and suddenly you have a traffic jam, a perfect bottleneck. Any other vehicle that tries to go around it either hits pre-laid mines in the fields or it just becomes a sitting duck for the FPV drones that are already circling.
So the first goal isn't even to destroy them, it's just to stop them, get them all bunched up, and then the big guns come in.
That's step 3, coordinated precision fire. The stalled column is the perfect target, and they get hit with everything. HIMARS, MLRS, and mobile artillery like the Bodana 155mm howitzers. All guided with perfect accuracy by the same recon drones that started the attack. It closes that loop between spotting a target and destroying it almost instantly.
The level of coordination must be incredible. What does that tell you about how the Ukrainians have adapted their command structure?
It tells you everything. You see this seamless integration between ground units like the 1st Azov Corps and these specialized USF drone groups like Magyar Birds. Drone warfare isn't just a support element anymore, it's the primary tool. Success comes from an organization that cuts out the bureaucracy between the sensor, the drone, and the shooter.
Which leads to the poor old tank. What's its role now? Is it obsolete?
On this battlefield, its role has been massively reduced. Our sources say they're basically just expensive battle taxis. They rush infantry to the front line, drop them off, and then they have to flee immediately because they can't survive out in the open. And the infantry they leave behind, they're just systematically hunted down by FPV drones in the mop-up. The whole combined arms idea is broken.
The tactical side is clear, but we have to talk about the human cost. When you read about the razor wire massacre, it's just horrific. This isn't just about losing equipment. It's a human catastrophe, and it feels like it's driven by pure desperation from their command.
It is. The assaults near Novoturetsky show a complete breakdown of any kind of tactical sense. Drone footage confirmed it. Over 50 Russian bodies tangled in razor wire, in the dragon's teeth, piled up in ditches. These were men sent on foot to try and support armored units that were already cut off. It's just commanders throwing bodies at a problem that armor couldn't solve.
And then the ammonia pipeline, detonating that near Razin Yar.
Yeah.
That sounds like something that would put your own troops at risk.
It absolutely was. An act of desperation that was basically self-sabotage. Russian commanders ordered it blown up to create a massive toxic cloud. The idea was to use it as a chemical smokescreen to confuse the defenders. But of course, it endangered their own troops, caused severe respiratory damage. It shows a terrifying willingness to gas your own people for a tiny momentary advantage.
So how do you connect these failures, this brutality, To the political level, why does Russia keep accepting these insane losses?
A lot of it is what you'd call cognitive warfare. It's aimed at creating diplomatic leverage. Russia launches these attacks, even ones they know will probably fail, to project an image of strength, of inevitability, especially ahead of something like the 2025 Russia-US summit. They want to look like they can keep this up forever, to force concessions at the negotiating table.
But Ukraine's success here must be a powerful counter-narrative, right? Repelling a 24-vehicle column so quickly.
Absolutely. It validates their military position and strengthens their diplomatic hand enormously. It gives massive support to the 20-point peace plan, the one that focuses on freezing the front line, over any older plan that might have involved giving up territory. Kyiv can now credibly say that Moscow simply cannot seize the rest of Donetsk with their current tactics and loss rates.
Which brings it back to the Russian high command. If these attacks are failing so badly, why do they keep ordering them?
The source material all points to a systemic problem. A deep culture of lying inside the Russian military. Reports suggest that top officials, maybe even Gerasimov and Belousov, are giving Putin exaggerated false reports. This rosy picture means he's ordering more offensives based on bad data, believing they're on the verge of success when they're actually walking into a meat grinder.
And we're even seeing that critique from inside Russia now, from the mill bloggers.
We are. They're usually very supportive, but they're publicly calling out commanders, naming Lieutenant General Sukhrob Akhmedov for sending men on suicide missions in broad daylight. They're openly admitting that with total drone surveillance, moving in a group bigger than 2 soldiers is a death sentence. That's a huge admission.
So, to synthesize this for you, the core takeaway is pretty clear. The defenses at Dobropillia proved that coordinated CUAS capabilities are now the price of admission for any offensive, period. This successful defense is what's safeguarding Ukraine's fortress belt. The age of the big armored breakthrough in a battle space like this is over.
And that really leads to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with. It's a question for every modern military watching this war. If this drone-mine synergy has effectively neutralized mechanized columns as we know them, what do you do next? And the answer isn't just buying more CUAS gear. It's about making local air defense, specifically anti-drone capabilities, a mandatory integral part of every single unit, not just a high-level asset, but something every squad has. The force that figures that out is the one that will control the next battlefield.
The battlefield has fundamentally changed, and Ukraine is writing the new rulebook on how to win a defensive war.
No question.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Uria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.